Good afternoon. Good. So my name is Faith Davis. I am the founder of DAF Technologies. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what an entrepreneur is. So we have a lot of ideas in our mind about what a typical entrepreneur is, right? You might think of a young guy sitting in a garage or a basement struggling to have this aha moment, somebody who's a genius, who can come up with this thing all by themselves, and overnight, they're millionaires, right? This is a story that we're sold in the media and the tech blogs about what an entrepreneur is. Is this a typical profile of what an entrepreneur is? Or is it an anomaly? Are stories, in fact, being told about things that are unusual or different because that's what stories want to highlight? Things that are different? So let's take a little bit of time and unpack some of these ideals that we associate with entrepreneurship and see how they stack up with reality. So the first myth, or the thing that we think often when we think of entrepreneurship, is someone who's young. Often in your mind, you'll think about Bill Gates, who was 20 when he started Microsoft. Or we'll think about Zuckerberg when he started Facebook, tinkering away in his dorm room. We often think about Steve Jobs, who was 21 when he started Apple. There's the Snapchat founder, Evan Spiegel, who was 23, or Drew Houston, who started Dropbox when he was 24. There are distinct advantages of starting companies when you're young. Typically, you have less responsibilities, bills, and things like that, responsibilities to pay for. You also don't have this view of how things are supposed to work yet, and you're able to allow your idealism to help guide you as you start these companies. However, the other part of the story, which you don't often hear, are the founders of a variety of ages. So there's Mark Pincus, who was 41 when he started Zynga. So all those hours that you spent playing Farmville on your phone was from a founder that started at the age of 41. Jimmy Wales, who started Wikipedia, did it at 35. Reid Hoffman started LinkedIn when he was 34. McDonald's, founder was over 50 when he started. So there's a variety of ages of founders when they start companies. There are distinct advantages of being an older entrepreneur when you start. Typically, you have a larger network because you've had more time to meet people who can potentially introduce you to customers or help with funding and ideas on how to start your business. And also, you're typically in a better financial situation, so you're able to invest more into your business and maybe go a longer time period before you are required to take a salary. According to the Kauffman Foundation, there's some KC folks in the audience here, the average and median age of an entrepreneur in the United States is age 39. And there are twice as many founders over the age of 50 as there are under 25. So the reality is an entrepreneur is someone who's at any age who's decided to solve a problem that people are willing to pay to solve. The next thing that we think of when we think of entrepreneurs are these people who are just amazingly genius, right? You think of people who are able to solve all of these problems all by themselves. I know I often think of Elon Musk as somebody who is just amazingly, IQ is really high. He's a CEO of multiple companies at the same time, and these just aren't any companies. We're talking about SpaceX, which is rocket science, and building electric cars. So these are not simple problems that he's solving, doing them simultaneously. But the reality is that the founder who gets all the credit often is surrounded by a team of people who help them achieve those goals. Steve Jobs did not create the personal computer by himself, nor did he start Apple by himself. The truth is that Steve Wozniak, along with a group of coders, tinkerers in the Homebrew Computing Club, are the ones who actually created the computer. He convinced them to sell it. All of their roles were important, and having this team that surrounded them allowed them to create Apple, which is one of the largest market cap companies today. So another thing that we want to talk about is being able to persist to success. So we often think about companies who are overnight successes, right? You think about the Instagram story. Kevin Systrom, in less than 2 years, was acquired by Facebook for $1 billion, right? This is a story that we all want to hear. We're going to come out and all be overnight successes, right? Wrong. The reality is that the average entrepreneur experienced 3.8 failures on their way to final success. And it's their persistence that defines them. So let's talk a little bit, share a couple of stories of founders who persisted to success. So the first one I'll highlight is Max Levchin. He is someone who had a couple of ideas in college, and when he came out, he moved to Silicon Valley, right? He was gonna live the dream. Now, he moved to his friend's couch, and that is where he started working on his ideas for the Palm Pilot. He wanted to provide security for the Palm Pilot. Well, the problem is that there was no market for this problem. So he went back and continued to tinker and iterate and grow and try and change it, and he was still kind of trying to get money to do his idea. He was trying to pitch to an investor and created a web demo to kind of demonstrate what he meant by security for the Palm Pilot. That web demo, he showed people sending money between two Palm Pilots and became the beginning of what we now know as PayPal, which had a huge exit and is a super successful company today. But if he had decided he was tired of sleeping on his friend's couch or tired of people not accepting or supporting his ideas, we may not have PayPal today. Another example is Raymond Ralph. He is the founder of Graph Science, but he had two startups that imploded prior to working on his third startup, which Graph Science as we know today. He went for 2 years without taking a salary, and during that time period had a major plumbing issue in his house. He was known to be showering at the gym during this time period in order to continue saving funds to work on his business. Eventually, he was acquired by Facebook and was one of the top analytic companies today. But how many of you would have been willing to shower at the gym or sleep on your friend's couch while you were getting persistent no's while you were trying to go after your dream? Persistence sounds good, right? Everybody says you have to fail in order to succeed, but the reality is that it's hard. It's something that takes a lot of strength and resilience in order to be able to do it. So through my entrepreneurial journeys, I have come up with a few things that could be helpful to all of us as we go through this journey of how to be persistent and to continue to persist to success. So one thing I would say is to surround yourself with community, and being at this conference is a good start to that. Being around people who understand what you're trying to do, who can encourage you, and can also provide assistance. Maybe they can provide an introduction to a customer that can help get you through that quarter where things are really rough. Or maybe an introduction to somebody who invested in their company that can be very helpful to you. So surround yourself with people who understand and are not gonna say, you know, you need to get off that couch. I think you should just go take a job. The next thing I would say is to be smart about how you iterate, right? No one wants to continue to shower at the gym unless they absolutely have to, right? So we wanna try and do this thing as efficiently as possible. So each time we iterate, we learn something that doesn't work, try and adjust something so that you're not repeating the same mistakes. Maybe that might mean changing your market. Maybe that might mean changing, your product, tinkering with it and make it better. Or maybe it's moving on to the next business idea. So understanding what you're changing as you're iterating is key to getting to that thing that works. Another thing I would say is give it time. So everything takes longer than we think it will, and you have to be patient with yourselves and give it time in order to get to the big dreams that all of you have in here. I've talked to quite a few people in today, and lots of people have big dreams, but you have to give yourself time to reach those goals. And the last thing I would say to help with persisting to success is staying positive. So this is not easy. It sounds, it's easier said than done. But being able to stay positive while things are not going great, while you're sleeping on your friend's couch, is important. So you have to find the thing that helps you stay positive and make sure that you make that a priority. So if that's prayer, if that's going camping, if it's dancing, if it's whatever it is for you, make sure you incorporate that thing into your routine and make it a priority. So the genius thing. And then one thing I would say is all these ideals and myths about entrepreneurship, don't let it prevent you from doing the most important thing that actually makes you an entrepreneur, and that is starting. So when I was in undergrad at Howard, I got exposed to entrepreneurship, and I wanted to do it. I knew it was something that I wanted to do, but I felt like I had to be this genius person that could be able to do this all by myself, right? So I said, let me go to graduate school at Stanford. Let me learn from entrepreneurs and surround myself with them so that I can learn how to do it, right? Let me go to the events. Let me be around entrepreneurs. Let me take another job where I can get more technical depth working at NASA to be able to help me along my journey. So all of those things were important because the contacts and the skills and things that I have learned have helped me. But you know what made me an entrepreneur? Finally, starting. So the first idea that I had was a mobile health company. It was going to be a behavioral change, right? I had secured the partnerships. I had the research on how it was all going to work. I applied for a grant, and guess what? I did not get that grant, and I was very disappointed. I had my heart set on it, but I didn't allow that to prevent me from being an entrepreneur. So my process of persisting to success, I've had to continue to iterate, to learn, to grow, to adjust to where today I'm currently an entrepreneur and the proud founder of DAF Technologies. So we are a technology consulting company that helps establish businesses that want to leverage emerging technologies so that they cannot get outmaneuvered by small, nimble upstarts. So I always like to use the example of Blockbuster Video, right? Everyone knows they used to go there on Saturday night to rent that great video. Well, they're not here anymore. And the reason why they're not here is because their space changed. Things went digital, and they didn't pay attention to how that changed. So a company like Blockbuster could have benefited from DAF Technologies because we could have helped them understand the space, what technologies were out there, and how they could use it to be a differentiator for them rather than a challenge. So let's reiterate. An entrepreneur can be any age. It can be age 8 with a person who has a little bow tie deal with the MBA, or you could be 78. Ben Franklin invented the bifocals at age 78. It's not necessarily somebody who's a genius, who's this super mythical creature, but somebody who is able to form a team around them that can help them solve a problem that people are willing to solve. It's somebody who's able to persist and iterate through challenges to success, and someone who starts. So find a way to start. Get your ideas out there in front of your customers. Test it. See if it's something worth pursuing. Form your legal entity and start. The world is waiting to see what you will create. Thank you.
I appreciate that you took the time to expand our view of what an entrepreneur looks like. I had a couple questions for you. One of them, hankering back a little bit into your talk, you mentioned basically on how to expand your circle, right? You talked about networking, all of that. But you had mentioned to me earlier in our conversation that staying positive is a great tool in being persistent. And you described to me some not unbusiness related activities that you found actually increase your chances of being positive enough to be persistent.
Absolutely. So yeah, like I mentioned, people tend to highlight the high points of entrepreneurship, the person who just got funded or the great story, but the reality is that success happens in those small moments when you're down and you just got that email of something you worked on for months that the deal is not going to close or something along those lines. And having your personal routine or things that you do to keep you positive is so important to have you in the frame of mind to be able to succeed. So for me personally, I like to go salsa dancing. It's something that I try and incorporate. I'm also an avid skier and snowboarder. So being active and being outside are some of the things that I try and do to make sure I maintain positivity to be able to continue to persist to success.
I gotta say, you broke a mold for me, because usually I take a look at a person and I can tell if they're a snowboarder or a skier. And you're like both.
Well, I've skied much more than I have boarder, so I have to pick one. I'm gonna go on the ski side.
Ooh, nice. My next question has more to do with a topic that Sheryl Sandberg nailed it, in Lean In.
Absolutely.
And that is, it is a reality that as women in leadership and in business, we face a double-edged sword of navigating the gender bias that truly exists and is not really talked about, especially in, Christian circles as much.
Absolutely.
Because there's an expectation. Can you speak to women in leadership and women in business, and how do you navigate? Any advice?
Yeah, so it's definitely a very real challenge. I think just starting from there not being a whole lot of women in the technical arena. So you'll have the issues where people will ask you if you're the secretary or maybe overlook or not listen to things when you give ideas at a board table. So I think one of the things that I do is you have to be, excellent as far as making sure that, as much as you can, try and be on top of your stuff, because if someone doesn't expect you to know your things, I think it's really important to be very strong technically. And I think another thing is to be intentional about trying to have your voice heard. So Sheryl Sandberg talks about making sure you sit at the table and be present in meetings and events and things like that. So just, maybe being a little more assertive and having your voice heard are a couple of things that can help. I mean, it's a very dynamic issue, and there's a lot of things that we could dig into on that, but those are two things that I would share on that topic.
And that's perfect. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.